guys for being here. We have another Mold Talks. And for this one, I'm very excited to introduce a new guest to you guys who happens to be a practitioner. So this is going to be really exciting to kind of dive into that. Without further ado, Melissa Dealey, would love for you to introduce yourself and let people know a little bit about who you are.
Thanks so much, Michael. I'm really honored to be here and excited to work with you again. So yes, my name is Melissa Dealey. I'm an integrative health practitioner and registered health coach. So I'm on the holistic side of helping people heal. What that means is I don't diagnose and I don't cure. What I do is I run functional medicine labs to help us see what's going on inside the body, where it is out of balance. And then in understanding where it's out of balance, I create a personal wellness protocol using natural herbs and supplements that help bring the body back into balance, at which point it will heal itself, because that's what it's designed to do, just like it heals a cut finger or broken arm. But modern life has us too far out of balance. We're way out here, poor nutrition, poor sleep, not too much going on in our do lives, and the body gets depleted. And so it can't bring itself back into balance. And so the work that I do is just helping figure out where those imbalances are and guide the body back into balance. And it will take over and heal itself, which is the beautiful thing about the human body. And when that happens, it actually happens really quickly. When we tune into our body and we have that awareness, it starts sending us messages and we start feeling better really quickly. So I love this work and love helping my clients heal.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much for that. And what's interesting. You said something that kind of struck with me. It's like modern life has really provided us a toxic world. I read somewhere that I think it's like 10, the average person consumes like 10 credit cards worth of plastic. Like if you actually line up 10 different credit cards, you're like, oh my God, just from like takeout food, being stored in plastic containers that leach into the food, and water bottles mostly being plastic that you drink from and things like that. You start to realize this, plus our shampoos and conditioners, like we consume so much plastic. Then you have other indoor environmental contaminants as well that, again, you're not aware of that could be impacting you too. So it's such a good really thing that you're doing, kind of looking at how our modern way of living disrupts our bodies and fixing those things. It's great.
And to that point, I read recently almost 100,000 man-made chemical toxins have been introduced to our atmosphere since World War II.
Wow.
So what's that? 80 years.
Wow.
80
That's
years.
A lot. 100,000.
Almost 100,000. The body doesn't adapt that quickly, right? So we are no longer in a position where we can avoid the toxins, no matter how diligent we are. And I do recommend people are diligent and lower their toxic load and pay attention to the personal care products they use. And, if they're buying a new bed or a new couch, is it covered in, fire retardant, or can you make a better purchase because you're going to sleep on that bed 8 hours a night? But even in everything that you can control, we can't control all these toxins getting in. So we also have to help support our body in getting these toxins back out. And that's a big part of the work that I do with my clients, is guiding them through a functional medicine liver detox in order to help support the body in getting the toxins out.
Yeah, and it's so important work that you do. I mean, my role basically is trying to help people by changing their environment and fixing the things that are causing them adverse reactions from their environment. But I'm not a healer. I'm not able to detoxify their body. And so, having to go to someone like you is such a vital part of the process. It's like stop the exposure, but also open up these detox pathways and allow your body to detoxify and start to heal. So thank you for everything that you do. And it's such an amazing, such an amazing thing that you do, what you do exactly. And I know that's why I'm excited to have you on here as a practitioner to kind of help provide some insight that we don't get to see often. So thank you for that.
Well, and thank you very much. And I really appreciate the work that you do in truly remediating the mold issue, right? And getting it out and not just patching it up. And because we can't see it, it's gone, right? That's kind of likened to where our medical industry is at today. It's that band-aid solution, and then it's out of sight, out of mind, and we think it's better, except that it's not. And getting to the root cause in both our health as well as in the environment is the critical piece to helping people truly heal from any exposure.
That's exactly right. And I know you have an interesting story with a little bit of mold exposure. Would love for you to share that if you won't mind.
I do. And it actually goes back 20 years. And so before I was even in health and wellness, and I was working in a hotel, and the building was being renovated. And while I was working there, all of a sudden, every single day, I started getting migraines. And I have suffered with migraines since I was 18 years old, but they were always hormonal. And it's part of what's driven me into health and wellness, because now I understand how to rebalance my hormones so I can minimize those migraines, which I've been very successful at. But at this point, getting them every single day, that wasn't hormonal. There was another reason. And for whatever reason, I was somebody that always wanted to know why. My logical mind said that if I know why this is happening, I can do something about it. But going to the doctor didn't get me any resolution, just a higher dose of and more medication. And that wasn't the answer. So I did suffer through, not for too long, like literally in a 2-week span. And one of the workers that was renovating the building came into the admin office and said, "Oh my God, there is so much mold in this building that we are uncovering in this stage of the reno." And that just went cha-ching, or not cha-ching, but da-ding in my head of mold. Oh my goodness, that could be causing these migraines. And I really didn't know anything about mold at that point, but it just intuitively made sense to me. And that's why I'm getting these migraines. So they're going to continue renovating this building. I can't work here anymore. I need to give my notice, and I need to get out of this situation. Because again, now I had that root cause and I needed to do something about it. So I literally handed in my notice for 2 weeks and I left, and the migraines stopped. And I also noticed on the weekends when I wasn't working, I wasn't getting the migraines. It was only when I was in that environment. And so I'm very grateful that intuitively, I just knew to do all of that. And it wasn't, my home, it was my place of work, but I was able to give my notice and leave. I knew it wasn't a healthy environment for me. And so it didn't become a long-term issue for me that I know it has for many people, because so often the symptoms are hard to put back on mold. The symptoms can be deceptive and they can be indicators of other things. And very often you go to the doctor with symptoms and the doctor doesn't necessarily have access to run the kind of labs that I can run today to look for mold, but they also have a hard time, putting you in that box of what's going on and which prescription do you need. And so I know there are people that go from doctor to doctor to doctor looking for answers.
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, I've had clients that have gone through like 40 doctors, one even recently 200 doctors. That's kind of the state of affairs that we're in. It's really frustrating to have that really be part of our system, to have that many people being, gaslit or, being told that there's nothing wrong with them. To have to go through that many doctors to finally find someone like you, it's really frustrating, but it's a sad reality that we're in.
It is, unfortunately. And I have clients that come to me and tell me that their doctors have called them a hypochondriac, or that it's all in their head. And what's really sad about that is that I teach my clients to listen to our body. I have a favorite saying, and it's listen when your body whispers so it doesn't have to yell at you. It's so important we listen, because all the symptoms that we have is our body's way of communicating that something's wrong and we need to do something different. And so if we now have a doctor telling us there's nothing wrong, or it's all in our head and we should be ignoring the way our body's talking to us, we're ignoring those early warning signs and that request to do something different. So to me, it's really important to pay attention. And yes, when you have these symptoms, look into what's going on and don't stop trying to figure it out, right?
Right.
Because there's
Yeah.
always a root cause, and we can always figure out what that is, but you have to find the right practitioner who has access to functional medicine labs that show us where these body imbalances are.
Yeah, you make a really good point. For all those listening, listen to your body, and there's people out there like us that do believe you, that do understand what you're going through and want to help you. So, it's if you're being gaslit or being told it's all in your head, you're not crazy, despite what you may be told. And it's just that people don't understand. They haven't checked this box off yet, and it's sad because really the three main components of illness are genetics, predispositions, and environmental impacts and exposures. So it's sad that a lot of people aren't connecting that last piece, because that last piece can impact the first two as well. And so it's pretty sad, but there are those out there who are listening. And Melissa,
Absolutely.
I understand that you've obviously been treating people for mold exposure for some time, and this Mold Talks podcast. If you've ever get to watch it, I interview people and they kind of share their story, and it helps others kind of connect with that and really get to understand. Wow, if that person could be experiencing it and I'm experiencing it, there's some actionable steps here that I can take to try to help figure out what's going on here. And it gives people that way to connect. So I'd love for you to share a story for those listening, or of somebody, remarkable that you've dealt with in terms of helping people through mold exposure.
Well, one of the most interesting ones is that I ran labs for some young children. So a 5-year-old and an 8-year-old, because mom suspected something was up. There was some behavioral issues going on, and she wasn't sure if it was food intolerances, but she wanted to understand what are these underlying balances or imbalances. And so I ran the same labs for both kids. And in the 8-year-old boy, it showed quite a high mold toxicity, but nothing in the 5-year-old girl. And so when I was reading the labs, preparing to create the personal wellness protocol, I was really intrigued. Well, how does only the boy have it and not the girl? And when I reviewed the labs with mom, I explained this and asked, does that make sense to you? And she said, you know what? It does. Because when he was born, we lived in a condo. And when he was about 1 year old, the condo next door had some kind of flooding or water damage, etc. And his bedroom was the shared wall with the condo next door, and his crib was against that wall. And so she said, now I bet that there was mold in that wall. And so he's sleeping there as a 1-year-old, 12 hours a day. He's breathing in the mycotoxins from the mold spores in the wall.
Wow.
And they moved out of that house before his sister was born. And that's why his sister doesn't have the mold. So it's fascinating how it can be affecting us. And in helping this young boy heal, it's really helped with behavioral issues, etc. He's feeling so much better. His digestive system is working better. It's allowing him to eat more foods, etc. So it's really powerful. And I'm just so grateful that mom wanted to run these labs and was open to looking into this, as opposed to this, boy growing up into a man and at 48 years old, having all of these ongoing chronic health conditions and still not being able to figure out what's wrong and why his, energy is down, and he's always got, a nasal drip or whatever the symptoms are that aren't normal, but there is no help for, because he's being told everything shows up fine on his labs through his regular doctor.
Yeah, that's pretty remarkable that you caught it so early, and the mother was made that educated decision to go forward with that, because in our society we've kind of believed this term, mildew isn't so bad, mold isn't so bad, we could use bleach or paint over it. And so it's really obviously we know that that's not true. But it's kind of the way our upbringing was the last 20 years. And I think it's really remarkable to see how people are starting to educate themselves or starting to become aware of their environment and the exposure of their environment. It's really cool that she was on the ball and had those investigations done so that you can really pinpoint that, because like you said, it may have been a situation where that person grown up 30 years from now may have been dealing with some chronic issues.
Exactly. So it's interesting because all of these things that you're talking about, and in the last 20 years of thinking mold's not so bad, it is, a natural form of life, in the sense that if you live somewhere where you have all 4 seasons and you have leaves falling off trees, and then those leaves are going to sit on the ground and break down and become, nutrients for the soil, there's mold in that process, right?
Sure.
There's, mold in a lot of our grains, the way they're packaged up and sent to the store, and then we purchase it. So it is a naturally occurring thing. It's just, we don't want that mold to get inside our body because it can be toxic, and particularly black mold. But, having too much of it in our environment and getting it inside our body does cause real health issues. And so we need to be aware of that and, deal with that. There's, mold on plants too, right? That can be in our house.
Sure.
And do you have mold on plants because you're overwatering or whatever it is? What can you do about that? Well, I learned recently that you can scrape off the top of that or replant that plant and then sprinkle in cinnamon, that it's a great antifungal, antimicrobial, and that can help alleviate mold on plants. So there's all sorts of things that we can be doing to be aware of the mold around us, but not accept it as normal and just ignore it.
Yeah, that's a neat tip and trick, the cinnamon trick. I'm gonna have to try that.
Yeah, I just did that actually with one of my plants this weekend.
Yeah, I usually tell people, look, stay away from plants inside your home just because of the fact they can leak on the floor, cause water damage that way. They can harbor mold in the soil. Mold can grow on the plants themselves. Yeah, it creates this hazardous situation because the EPA states that on average, the indoor air quality is 50 times worse than the outdoor air quality. When you look at that number, it starts to make a lot more sense, right? Because you're like, well, mold's part of our ecosystem. How does that impact me? Why do I need to be worried about it being in my home? Because if it's growing in your home, it's going to be producing at a much, much higher output than if you were to breathe it in from being outside. And that's where, the abundance, like we've all heard that saying, too much of anything is no good for you. Well, in this case with mold, it's certainly true. Too much of these particles entering the body at one time, it really starts to impact the immune system and starts to build up that toxicity. And I think that's really that's really the interest of what I have in terms of looking at the environment and how can we reduce that exposure. You're looking at reducing the quantity and the amounts that you're dealing with. So,
and to that point, that's a problem in today's world. I call it sick home syndrome. All the new homes that are built for optimal energy efficiency, right? They're so tightly built so that no, air can get in or escape because we want to keep it warm and climate controlled and all of that. But what that's doing is it means that we're keeping all the toxins inside as well. And so to your point, the air inside the house may not be as healthy as you think. And so getting a really good HEPA filter, air filter to, help with that inside the home is important. But if you live in an environment, like I've got my office windows open right now, and all summer I have them open because then I'm getting the benefit of the air outside coming in and my toxins inside getting out, which is really important as well.
Yeah, that exchange of airflow is great. So I have to ask this question because I think this is going to be a very, very helpful question for those listening. What's the telltale signs when someone comes to you and they're like, I am experiencing blah, that make you start to assume at that point, hey, we got to do mold toxicity screening here because I am for sure, based upon what you're telling me, that this can be a potential environmental impact. I would love to know that. I think people watching would as well.
One of the key ones is congested sinuses year round, all the time. that runny nose, coughing, just the body trying to get the toxins out, but not enough is being done. And so this person is just stuck with congestion all year round. That's absolutely key. But there's other things such as, headaches, like I experienced, migraines, brain fog, fatigue, difficulty concentrating. And that's where this can get difficult if you're going to the doctor and you're giving them these symptoms, that they're not necessarily first going to think of mold, and they're going to think of a number of other issues that you may have and address those first. So it can be difficult to assess, but the beautiful thing about the labs that I run is what I'm running is a lab that's assessing what's going on inside the body, particularly in terms of the gut, in terms of bacterial overgrowth, yeast, fungal, and mold. It's all in one. Because of the gut-brain connection, we're also getting to understand neurotoxins, neurotransmitters and how they're functioning, because when the gut is unhappy, the brain is unhappy, and vice versa. So we want to have a look at that. And this same lab shows energy function, it shows vitamin deficiencies, and it shows how our detox pathways are functioning. So in the case of the little boy that I was talking about earlier, it wasn't that I immediately thought, oh, he has mold based on symptoms. It was, let's just take a look and see what's going on inside his little body. And this lab, as well as the food sensitivities lab, is a great place to start. And that showed up the mold.
Wow. Yeah, those are some really great insights, and into kind of how you look to diagnose, not diagnose, but how you look to take things to the next step of doing some further testing to see what's going on with the body. And I think, it's really, like I said, it's really amazing how you link the environmental exposures to the actual health of the person, because, I think it's not enough people do. And, there's obviously more than mold. There's bacteria toxins, as you mentioned as well. You have endotoxins, exotoxins, mycotoxins, mold itself, bacteria itself, VOCs, formaldehyde. There's a whole range of environmental impacts or indoor pathogens that can be disruptive. And mold seems to me to be one of the common denominators of it all. But, just it's really cool how you kind of tie that together and because like I said, so many people have gone from doctor to doctor, doctor to doctor, and they're put into these baskets without ever asking even the question of, hey, have anything changing in your environment? So no, thank you for that. I really appreciate that. I was going to ask you what are the common symptoms you hear about, but you kind of went into those, with the brain fog and losing train of thought and all those symptoms that we hear so much about. Anything else that you've ever seen maybe that isn't so common that that struck you as interesting?
Well, there's a few others that can be linked to mold that people may not correlate. So abdominal pain and bloating, right? Yeah. People tend to put that down to what they're eating and not realizing that it's actually the state of their digestive system that is causing that, rather than just the food they're putting in. Feeling weak all the time. And, that's not normal, right? And so often we tend to write off symptoms as aging or genetics or allergies, etc. But as I said earlier, the human body is this amazing healing machine. And if you're feeling weak all the time, think about what is causing that? Don't just accept it as it's part of the aging process. And then the other one is also difficulty with breathing, because you can get mold spores in your lungs. And if that's not something that you have a reason to understand why that's not your normal, or you've got, other lung issues going on and this is new, look at that. Because again, we shouldn't just suddenly start having difficulty with breathing. Obviously, every breath we take is critical to our human survival. So the body wants us to be able to breathe well. And when we can't, look into, why, and start to dig a little bit deeper in your own mind as what could be triggering this. Sometimes mold can trigger a metallic taste in the mouth as well. So that's something that people might want to look into. A feeling of lightheadedness or skin numbness or tingling can also be associated with mold, as well as watery eyes and blocked vision. And that can often come again with the sinuses and congestion that I talked about earlier.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. That was actually really cool because some of those symptoms you've named, I haven't really heard much about. People haven't really talked about it in terms of how they're feeling. So it's a nice perspective to kind of see some of the other symptoms that you've run into with the exposures. So, all right. So let's say I know I have mold. I get out of the environment because obviously part of the recovery is you want to stop yourself from being exposed, right? So I get out of the environment. What sort of programs are you putting me on so that I can continue to get better?
So first of all, I would start with a 21-day functional medicine liver detox. So this helps support the liver in doing what it's supposed to be able to do, which is keep our body pure and clean. The problem is as we've talked about earlier, with all of these toxins, our liver is overburdened in today's world, and it's undernourished because we have depleted soils since the advent of industrial agriculture. Take from the land, and no time for the soil to regenerate the nutrients. If they're not in the soil, they're then not in the food that we eat. So the liver has two phases of detoxification, phase 1 and phase 2. Phase 2 is critical because that's when the liver is preparing the toxins to be able to exit the body. So they have to become water soluble in order to do that. But the nutrients the body needs to complete that phase are not in our soils. So they're not in our food. So we are, as I say, undernourishing our liver while overburdening it. And as a result, our body ends up with all sorts of toxins in it that we can't get out. So this 3-week functional medicine liver detox helps the body start to get our toxic load out and bring the body back into a state of balance and clearing all of our pathways. But when it comes to mold, we need a little bit more. So we start off with that, which clears the pathways to allow the mold protocol to actually get in and do its job. I liken it to overflowing trash cans in a park. Our liver and kidneys in general are overflowing. And when you put something on top of the overflowing trash can, it just falls to the side and doesn't get to where it needs to go. So if I start you off on the mold protocol right off the bat, it's not going to be as effective because the nutrients in that protocol are not going to get to where they need to go as well because they're being blocked by the toxins that are inside your body. So we get the toxins out of the way, and then we use the mold protocol so that they can get to where they need to go for you to have optimal results, which is what I want. I want you to be able to heal. So start with the 21-day functional medicine liver detox, and I guide people through that. It's not just here, buy this and do it, because again, we're changing habits. We're changing the timing of when we eat. We're changing the way we're eating. We're doing things differently, and our brain gets in our own way. Our brain is charged with keeping us safe, and it knows it can keep you safe because you're here and you're alive. The moment you start doing something different, it goes, what are you doing? And where are you going with this? And I don't know if I can keep you safe over there. So I'm going to send you little messages to bring you back over here into your comfort zone where I know I can keep you safe because you're alive. So instead, when you work with me through these programs, I connect with you through an app. So whenever you have questions, you can just message me through the app to get answers. Because when you get your answers, you can talk back to your brain and go, I do know what I'm doing. Don't tell me I don't know what I'm doing. When it starts chirping and going, this is different. This is hard. You don't even know what you're doing. It's so important to be able to talk back to our brain and be in charge of our brain instead of letting our brain be in charge of us. Because when we're in charge of our brain, that's when we can successfully complete programs and we grow and we get to a new comfort zone and a new place of health, which is what we want. So that's that program. Once we finish that program, we move straight into the mold protocol. And that protocol, it's just 6 different products. So one is called the rapid immune boost. And so this is herbs to boost our immune system while battling the fungi and the mold. And then we use silver hydrosol, which is a colloidal silver, which is promoting powerful immune support as well. It's so important as we're doing this and we're stirring everything up and we're getting it out that we are supporting our immune system so that we're not getting sick through this process. Then we use L-glutathione, which is a universal antioxidant, very powerful detoxifier, and so continues to support the liver. We're using GI balance, which is promoting healthy gut through this process. We're using something called paramine, which is promoting healthy respiratory and immune function. And then lastly, something called FM detox, which we also use in the 21-day detox, which is again supporting the liver and kidneys to detox. So this all comes down to the fact that mold is a toxin. And we start off with that first generic 21-day functional medicine detox, and then we continue for a little bit longer on the mold protocol to just help the body get the rest of these toxins that are a little bit tougher to get out and get them out of the body.
That's really fascinating, and I love how you have kind of this two-step process. It's pretty unique because I haven't always heard of that before, but I love it because you're kind of basically setting your body on a path where you're getting rid of some of that burden, and then opening up your body to try to stir things up and remove them. I think that's brilliant. So I love the way you do that.
I can't take credit for it. It's part of the protocols in my training that I've learned from a naturopathic doctor, Dr. Stephen Cabral, and he created the protocol. He had a practice of 250,000 clients over the years and a year-long wait list. And he wanted to help more people, and he didn't want people waiting for a year. So he created a program to train others in order to be able to read these labs and use his protocols. And all of his study comes from naturopathic medicine, studying Ayurvedic medicine, studying traditional Chinese medicine, orthomolecular medicine, bioregulatory medicine, and taking the best of the best. He was on a mission as a very sick 17-year-old, been told by mainstream medicine that you just have to live with this for the rest of your life. There's nothing we can do. And he went on a mission for the next 10 years to figure out what is the best medicine in the world. And what he determined is there isn't any one best medicine, but you can take the best pieces of each of them to create really amazing natural protocols to help people heal. And so these protocols work. He's used them in his practice over the 250,000 client base. And I've used them in my business with my clients, and they truly work. And I'm so grateful for his work. So I didn't have to do all of the research to figure it out for myself. And now I save my clients having to do that. They can just know that they're going to be guided on this journey. They can relax into that process. They can stop going to Dr. Google, stop feeling like they're the only one struggling with this, and instead allow themselves to be guided. And when we do that and we get out of the stress state and we can relax into the process, that's when the body can truly heal.
Yeah, I know for me too, when I am dealing with anything that's in relation to health, I need a process. I need a step-by-step instructions. I am really good at researching and putting dots together and connecting things. But for some reason, when it comes to your own action plan, or my own action plan, I should say, I love that guidance. It's kind of like, I kind of look at it as like a recipe. When I'm cooking, I love to follow a recipe. And it just kind of just having that step-by-step instruction just makes things so easy and enjoyable. And as you're completing each step, you're kind of going on to the next path. So I love that program that you've put together with the training that you've went through, and I think that's very helpful for people.
It is, and I feel that it is so important because when you're in it, it sucks, right? And you feel like crap. You don't have the energy, you don't have the mental clarity, and maybe you're still trying to work and you're still trying to raise your kids, et cetera, that it's just one more thing that is causing you so much angst And so, yes, being guided through just allows that to be relieved, and it's not on your shoulders anymore. And you can just follow the program. And as I said, that's when the body heals. The body does not heal in a stress state. We got to get you out of that stress state for the body to heal.
Yeah, no, it's great advice. I think, thank you. I hope this podcast for those listening is extremely informative. Like I said, it was super exciting that we got to do this because I knew you'd help bring a perspective in, to help people out. And I hope that's what brings to this. So last question I have for you is, let's say I am listening to this podcast and I happen to be someone who through listening to this, I start to connect some dots and I'm like, you know what, maybe my environment is the problem. Would love to hear your thoughts on where do they begin? What's that next step?
Well, that next step is there's obviously running some labs in order to determine, is there mold inside my body is a great first step. So reaching out to holistic, integrative health practitioners like myself to help run those labs is really the best place to start, because then we get to stop guessing. We literally start testing and then we know. So my business actually is COVID proof in that it's 100% virtual, and I work with people all over the English speaking world, as do many of my colleagues. So finding that practitioner that you're able to work with that can run labs for you. And then once you have those lab results, you're going to get a personalized wellness protocol guiding you through exactly what we've talked about, the detox, the mold protocol, but at the same time, also then advising you on finding someone like yourself that is the mold in the home. Where is this mold coming from? And having a remediator, a good quality remediator company come out and do that assessment so that we can figure out where this is coming from, because it's not enough just to help the body get rid of the mold if you're going back into that moldy environment constantly. It's also understanding what the exposure is and fixing that or removing yourself from that environment, one or the other.
Yeah, no, it's perfect. That's a perfect action plan. Get diagnostics of the body, the home, get lab results, make an action plan based upon those. And I think that's really the best thing, that best path forward. Yeah. Hey, so I want
to know it can be done, right?
It can be done.
Told you have to suffer with this for the rest of your life. And that is so not true. And so to give you hope and to inspire you to keep going on your journey, because you can resolve this health issue.
Yeah, I did a post just recently. I think it was last week. Mold doesn't define you. It's not who you are. And you aren't going to be sick forever. There's something that can be done about it. You can get on that road to recovery. It's not the easiest, right? It does require taking some steps, but once you do, you start to feel better. You get that momentum and that energy you need to keep going. And I've helped over 1,000 people, working with people and getting them out of the environment and fixing their environments and kind of getting them to where they need to go. I've seen that firsthand. And like I said, it doesn't necessarily mean it's easy. It can be, it's a road to recovery, right? It's not a flip of a switch. So as long as you know that and you're taking the right steps towards that, you can definitely do something about it and get yourself. But I think the first step is awareness, right? And one of the reasons I do this podcast is because a lot of people aren't aware that their environment could be what's causing their symptoms, or could be the underlying issue to what they're experiencing. So, just being aware that an environment can impact you, and getting the diagnostics you need with proper lab testing, both for the body and for the home, that's going to be really, really helpful to determine what's going on and how do you fix it.
Very true. I fully agree with you.
Melissa, it was such a pleasure having you on here. I think you brought such an amazing perspective to this podcast. I really want to thank you and appreciate the time that you spent to help educate, our people, and really appreciate it. Is there any last parting words you'd like to offer before we end off?
Well, thank you, first of all, for having me. I really appreciate it. People can see if they're watching in the background, my website is there. And if they're listening, it's yourguidedhealthjourney.com. That may be a starting point for you if you are struggling and are looking for help. And I do offer complimentary 30-minute consults to help people figure out if A, they want to work with me, and B, me to hear their story and figure out which lab tests might be the right labs. And I'm going to finish with that quote from the very beginning. Listen when your body whispers, so it doesn't have to yell at you. When our health starts to go sideways, we really must address what's going on as soon as we can, because if we don't, it continues to deteriorate, unfortunately, and that's when our body starts yelling. So looking into this sooner rather than later, even if it's just to rule it out, is beneficial.
Yeah, no, very, very powerful words there. And you're exactly right. You can do something about it before it becomes a bigger problem, and yeah, I just want to thank you again for taking the time to connect with me here and help share your knowledge with our audience. Really appreciate it. For those tuning in, thank you for tuning in as always. And I hope this was as informative for you as it was for us. And, love what we do because I get to learn new things every single day. And yeah, just thankful for the opportunity to be here. Melissa, thank you.
Thanks so much, Michael. And you keep doing what you're doing. You're, creating awareness around this issue. And I really appreciate that. It's a topic that more people do need to become aware of.
Yeah, I totally agree. Thank you for noticing that. And we'll be in touch. We'll talk soon.
Thank you. Take care.